That sexist comments should not be part of the public debate or part of any conversation anywhere, period. So I ask the Leader of the Opposition, will he stand here today, do the right thing, and denounce his members' comments and ask him to issue a full apology to this House?
Why is the Prime Minister putting up roadblocks for job creation?
It's very disappointing that the Leader of the Opposition will not denounce these statements.
Mr. Speaker, while answering media questions yesterday, the Prime Minister described his, quote, family fortune.
And the Leader of the Opposition refuses to denounce the comment of his colleagues in front of all members of this House and indeed in front of all Canadians.
Minister Jim Carr repeatedly asked Conservative leader Andrew Scheer to denounce his MP Gerry Ritz today. Ritz referred to the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change, McKenna, as, quote, our climate Barbie in a tweet. After some online blowback, Ritz deleted the tweet and posted an apology. Did Andrew Scheer do the right thing by ignoring the request to denounce Ritz, or was it a missed opportunity to show the Conservatives will stand against sexism? Time for the Power Panel. In Toronto, Supriya Dwivedi, host of Toronto's 6:40 a.m. morning show. Martin Patrickman of iPolitics in Montreal. Here with me in studio is Tim Powers of Summa Strategies and Earnscliffe Strategy Group's Kathleen Monk. Hello, everybody. Hi. Tim, I'm going to start with you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Missed opportunity.
I feel like Ken here today. I'm all ready to go.
Is there a missed opportunity, or is this just like pure politics? What do you make of it?
There's a bunch of things here. First of all, Gerry Ritz was a stupid comment. It's not a comment that should be made by anybody, and he should know better. I see Kathleen's list. He stepped in it a few times before on
She came prepared, folks. She came prepared.
But the real frustrating thing, I'm sure, for Andrew Scheer is this. I mean, for 2 days anyway, it's not moving in the polls, but at least he was dominating the news agenda with the critique of the Liberals' tax package. Now he's got to do what many Conservative leaders before him and other party leaders have had to do, deal with dumb comments, offensive comments made by a member of Parliament. Gerry Ritz's parting gift to the Conservatives shouldn't have been this. Should Andrew have denounced it? That probably would have been the smart thing to do, but my understanding is part of the debate that is ongoing up there is Andrew Scheer has advanced the notion that he is fully supportive of free speech, even if that speech is and that speech has been corrected. So I'm not saying I support that, but I think that's part of the debate there. The easiest thing to do would have been for Andrew Scheer to say, you know what, that was not acceptable. I've spoken to the minister, or sorry, the former minister, and he's apologized. Let's move on from here.
Kathleen is dying to get in here.
Yeah, but exactly. Scheer didn't do that. I mean, we could spend this segment talking about what a foolish move this was by Gerry Ritz, especially outgoing, as Tim says, not a nice parting present to his caucus in terms of leaving them with this, you know,
I do want to say that tweet stayed up for hours, too. As much as we say he deleted it and apologized.
Yeah, but I don't even want to dwell on Gerry Ritz because bye-bye, you're gone. And there are examples in the past, certainly, and when he was in the middle of the crisis, the listeriosis crisis, you know, he said death by 1,000 cold cuts. But what I actually want to point out is that when that mistake last happened, Stephen Harper, who was Prime Minister at the time, called Gerry Ritz out on that and said, you know, he had to apologize and those mistakes were wrong. You know, you don't see that action by Andrew Scheer, and that's why I want to focus on the complete failure of Andrew Scheer as opposition leader today. And I wonder what happened to his team. This is not the hot to trot, quick reaction opposition team of the Conservatives that was working under Rona Ambrose, because they would react better than that with Rona. And I'm not seeing that under Scheer, because this was a huge failure, as it has been with Senator Bayak, in terms of him not denouncing Bayak, and then now not denouncing and clearly responding to Gerry Ritz today, which he should have.
And I do want to give a little, just before you jump in, Marty, I just want to give a little bit of context, which is we've been trying to get Andrew Scheer to comment today. It is Wednesday, caucus day, a happy day for reporters, because it means usually that we can get somebody from each of the parties to comment. He was not at the microphone today. We've been looking for him coming in and out of question period. We cannot find him. And so certainly we are ready to hear his comment. comments, but we have not heard them yet. But Marty, you wanted to jump in.
Way to get ahead of the issue there, Andrew. The one thing I would say, I think the Bayak thing is a little bit different than the Gerry Ritz thing. I think both of them have opened their mouths and said stupid things, but I honestly think this, and it's a bit of a knock on the CPC, is that I don't think he's condemned what she said, but hasn't done very much on it, because I honestly think there are people within the Conservative movement and within the base of the Conservative Party that actually believe what Bayak said. That said, on Gerry Ritz, though, just quickly, if I were to come out and say Gerry Ritz should be kicked out of his caucus, I would win all sorts of friends on Twitter or whatever. But
you're not looking for friends on Twitter, Marty Patrick.
No, I'm looking for friends on Facebook. They're much more valuable. I think it would be a bad idea for two reasons. A, if you kicked everybody out with a big mouth and a middling talent pool, you would have a lot more bodies in Parliament.
Yeah.
Second of all, he is a great. I mean, if I were a Liberal, I would be loving this guy, man. Like he is a walking distraction. Jim Carr demonstrated it perfectly before. You could deflect questions off him just from what he happened to open his mouth on. And if I were a Liberal, again, I would be very sad the fact that he's leaving at the end of the month.
Well, I do actually want to throw something to Supriya for a minute, because to turn this whole thing on its head, is that really an appropriate use of question period? I mean, the minister is supposed to be answering questions, not necessarily, shooting out these political missives at his adversaries. Supriya, was that the right place for that kind of attack?
Well, I mean, I think so, only given the fact that it was dominating some of the news cycle, and I think people deserve to hear the answer. And in terms of what Scheer has done, I agree completely with Kathleen that this is a huge missed opportunity for them, and I'm not seeing the same sort of response or the same sort of savvy that was shown when Ambrose was serving as interim leader. And I mean, look, I was one of those people that took to Twitter to say that referring to the minister as climate change Barbie is likely not the best thing for a party that is losing from a 2-to-1 ratio when it comes to the Liberals for female vote support. But more to that, I think it also speaks to the problem that the Conservatives have generally with flirting with the alt-right and flirting with a not-so-savory base, because climate change Barbie wasn't just a brain fart on Gerry Ritz's part. It's been made popular by the Rebel. And, Scheer has his own issues with the Rebel and not being able to distance himself from them quick enough, in my opinion. But he could have very easily put out a boilerplate statement, something to the effect of, I don't agree with his comments. The Conservative Party respects women very greatly. Likely have Lisa Raitt come in there, say something as deputy leader. They have enough strong women in the Conservative caucus that they could lean on in a situation like this. And yet the fact that they're not doing it just shows to me that it's amateur hour.
Mm-hmm. Well, appropriate and question period should never be put in the same sentence. First of all, Catherine, just so you know.
It doesn't really matter.
And I'm not mansplaining here. I'm just saying that. I think what Andrew Scheer needs to do is look back in the early days of when Stephen Harper was opposition leader. Kathleen probably remembers this because she was here then. There was an MP by the name of Larry Spencer. And it was just days after Stephen Harper became then leader of the Canadian Alliance. And Larry Spencer made some really dumb, offensive, cruel comments about homosexuality. Mm-hmm. And Harper did not hesitate. And this was at a time when the new parties had come together. There was a footsie going on with the then alt-right, and he shut it down right away. It's important for Andrew Scheer to learn these lessons. It's one thing, and I do say, don't overlook it as much as it may pain everybody here to buy that Andrew Scheer wants open and free speech. There's open and free speech, and then there's stupid, offensive speech that the person has acknowledged themselves as being that. When that opportunity comes, you have to act. And I think Andrew will want to learn from this, because he's just, not him, but Ritz has killed the positive news cycle they had going for 2 days. This is going to continue for 2 more days. Can they get back on the tax issue? Let's hope so.
Yeah, what is telling about what happened, I think, in question period today is, in question period, you have to think on your feet, right? Mm-hmm. Topics come up, news breaks, you get responses that you didn't expect, for instance, like Minister Carr did today, where he posed a question back at the opposition leader. And the judge of an effective opposition leader or effective MP, frankly, anyone in QP, is how you react in those moments and how quickly you can think on your feet and how you can work with maybe without a script or without a question, and he failed failed that test today.
But am I being too high-minded to say, and maybe that's not the right term, but to say, like, the question period is for the government to answer questions? Yeah, okay, all right. Again, I'm getting laughed at the power panel
there's
today.
another question you could ask. You could ask why it was that Minister Carr responded that way, and why it wasn't, for instance, the Minister of Status of Women who sat right beside him. You know, why wasn't it? Sorry?
Yeah, no, I agree, Kathleen. It should have been Minister Monsef.
And that would have made actually a better visual, a better statement, and it would have given the minister whose portfolio it is, you know, to actually
What, two white males talking about something dumb an old white male said is not good optics?
That's it. I enjoyed seeing a little fire in the belly from Minister Carr. It was nice to see him, you know.
I am curious about what it is exactly we would like, Andrew. Is it sufficient for Andrew Scheer to say, as he said before, I am a feminist, and, you know, this doesn't represent our views, and then move on? I mean, Gerry Ritz is gone in 2 weeks or something like that.
But say what the average
We wouldn't be sitting here talking about any of this if he had done just that. Literally 10 minutes after he'd done it. And just to Tim's point about the early days of the Canadian Alliance and Stephen Harper, you can go even further back than that. When Preston Manning, you know, was dealing with people that were coming out and saying things like, and I can't remember the individual, but, you know, talking about putting women and colored people in the back of the store if that's what the client wants. Preston Manning, a very decent human being, came out and disavowed that very, very quickly. It's not that difficult to find examples of this in the past in the conservative movement, and Andrew Scheer should take note.
Okay, well, we are going to leave the discussion there for the moment, but there is a lot more to talk about with the Power Panel, and that will come on right after this quick break.